The old clock in the living room struck 6 in the morning. Although I didn't need an alarm clock, I hadn't slept a wink all night. My hands were shaking as I made myself a cup of tea, the last one in this house. 3 cardboard boxes labeled fragile in Jarrett's sweeping handwriting were already sitting on the table. 47 years old, and he still wrote like a schoolboy. My eldest son had never been known for his neatness. I slowly scanned the kitchen, the faded floral curtains that Silas and I had hung back in the 80s, the old wooden spice rack he had made himself, standing knee-deep in sawdust in the garage. How many stories did these walls hold? 43 years. Almost half a century. The terrace overlooked the backyard. The apple tree we planted when Webb was born now towered over the garage roof. My youngest was already 39 years old, and the tree was still bearing fruit. At least this time he promised to come by in the evening to help with the last few things. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Madeline came up with some excuse for him not to come. My daughter-in-law always thought I took up too much of his time. I climbed the creaky stairs to the bedroom. The dresser was already empty, only the photographs on the walls remained. A wedding photo where we were both so young. I was 25, Silas was 27. Our travels, Niagara Falls, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone. The day Laurel graduated, the only one of the children to finish college. Silas was beaming with pride, even though he had already started drinking. 3 years later, he was gone. "Don't be sad, Doris," I said aloud as I took the photos off the walls. "You've coped with worse." I carefully wrapped each photo in newspaper, as if wrapping a child up for a cold winter walk. I wonder how many of them will fit in the 3 boxes Jarrett gave me. "Mom, we can't take everything," he said a week ago when he brought the boxes. "You'll have a small room. Take only the essentials." The essentials. How do you determine what is essential in a life spanning 68 years? Photo albums? Silas's letters? The collection of porcelain birds I've been collecting all my life? Books with dog-eared pages and notes in the margins? Kitchen utensils that remember the warmth of my hands? When the phone rang, I jumped so much that I almost dropped the photo I was holding, the one of Silas holding newborn Webb in his arms. "Mom? Are you up?" Laurel's voice sounded tense and a little irritated, as it had been lately. "Good morning, dear. Yes, I'm just gathering the last few things. Jarrett and I are on our way. We'll be there in about an hour. Did you pack all the necessary medications? There's a nurse at Sunny Cedars, but it's better to have everything on hand." Sunny Cedars. Even the name sounded fake. What difference did it make if it was sunny or rainy if it wasn't my home? "Yes, Laurel, I packed everything. I was a school nurse for 35 years, remember? I know how to handle medicine." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, please don't start. We already discussed this. It's a temporary solution until you recover from your pneumonia." Temporary. Yeah, right. Jarrett has already found a real estate agent to sell the house. They think I don't know? The pneumonia was 3 months ago, and I've been fine for a long time. But it's convenient for them to pretend I'm a frail old woman who can't take care of herself. "Of course, dear. See you in an hour." I hung up and continued packing photos. My gaze fell on a picture taken in the backyard 20 years ago. Silas is standing next to his old Chevrolet covered in motor oil, but smiling as if he's just won the lottery. Next to him, I'm wearing an apron and handing him a glass of lemonade. It was the day he finally finished his little invention, as he called it. How many nights he spent in the garage poring over drawings and parts. "Doris, this could change everything," he said, showing me some metal contraption that I didn't understand. "It's an improved valve for the engine that saves 15% on fuel. Can you imagine?" I couldn't imagine it, but I believed him. Silas had always been smart, he just lacked an education. When his father died, he had to drop out of college and go to work as a mechanic to help his mother raise his younger brothers and sister. But his mind worked better than any professor's. I remember how he came home after meeting with the patent attorney, beaming. "They say it's a really valuable invention, Doris. We filed for a patent. Now we need to find a company that wants to use this technology." And he found one. A few months later, he signed a contract with an auto parts manufacturer. The amount wasn't astronomical, but the steady royalty payments significantly improved our financial situation, especially when the kids went to college. Although only Laurel graduated, Jarrett dropped out after his sophomore year, and Webb got hooked on computers and took some courses instead of going to college. Silas asked me not to tell anyone about the patent. It's our safety net, Doris. The kids need to learn to earn their own money, not rely on ours. And I kept that secret even after he died. The royalties kept coming in, and I put most of it aside for a rainy day, telling the kids it was just retirement savings. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should have told them the truth after the funeral. But I was afraid that the money would change their relationship. Jared had always been greedy. Laurel loved the good life. And well, Webb always took the path of least resistance. The payments were enough to help them through tough times, to pay the down payment on Jarrett's house, help Laurel with her college debt, and give Webb money to start his first computer business, which, incidentally, went under after a year. I sighed and closed the box of photographs. I needed to go down to the basement and gather the documents from the safe. All the patent papers, bank statements, and the contract with the company were kept there. Salas had always been meticulous about documentation. When I reached the stairs to the basement, the front door swung open. Jarrett and Laurel had arrived earlier than promised. "Mom, where are you?" Jarrett's voice echoed through the house. "I'm coming," I shouted, turning away from the basement door. I would have to gather the documents later when they were busy loading the car. Jarrett stood in the hallway, tall like his father, but with my features. Laurel, thin and nervous, was already looking through the boxes in the living room. "Mom, is that all you packed?" Her voice was filled with undisguised irritation. "We agreed that everything would be ready for when we got here." "Good morning, Laurel. I'm glad to see you too," I said, trying not to let the hurt show in my voice. I packed everything that fit into the 3 boxes Jarrett brought. I need more boxes for the rest. Jarrett glanced at his sister. "Mom, we talked about this. You can't take all this stuff to the nursing home. There's no room." "It's not a nursing home," he corrected himself, noticing my expression. "It's a retirement community, with medical care and everything you need." "I don't need medical care, Jarrett. I was a nurse myself, remember? And my mind works fine. I can take my medicine on time." "You've gotten weaker since you had pneumonia," Laurel interjected, starting to rummage through the boxes. "And why do you need so many photographs? You'll only have one wall for them in your room." "This is my life, Laurel, mine and your father's." "We understand, Mom," Jarrett said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "But you have to understand that this will be better for everyone. You'll be looked after, you won't have to cook or clean, and we'll have peace of mind knowing that you're being taken care of. It'll be better for everyone." I've heard that phrase dozens of times over the past few weeks. Better for whom? For them, of course. Jarrett needed the money from selling the house to expand his auto repair shop. Laurel had recently divorced and wanted to start a new life in another city. And Webb was just going with the flow, as always. "I want to stay in my house," I said firmly. "I can hire a housekeeper if you're so worried. I have the money." "Your pension is barely enough to pay the bills, Mom," Laurel sighed. "And the house needs constant repairs. The roof is leaking, the foundation is sinking. You don't want to wake up one day under the rubble of your own home, do you?" What an exaggeration. Yes, the house is old, but it's solid, like everything built in those days, and I have money, much more than they think. But if I tell them about the royalties now, they'll think I'm trying to bribe them to stay. Besides, Jarrett added, you live too far away from all of us. If something happens, we won't be able to get there quickly. I almost laughed. Get there quickly? Jarrett visited me once a month, at best. Laurel only came by when she needed money or parenting advice. Webb only showed up for holidays, and not even all of them. I understand your concern, I said, trying to sound calm. But this decision is too hasty. Let's at least discuss the alternatives. Mom, we've already discussed everything, Laurel began, taking photos out of the box. Look, you can only take the most important ones. This one, where we're all together at Christmas, and this one, your wedding photo. You can leave the rest. Leave them where? I asked, feeling a wave of anxiety rising inside me. What will happen to the things I don't take? Jarrett and Laurel exchanged glances again. Their silent communication always annoyed me. It was as if they were conspiring against their younger brother when they were children, and now, it seemed, against me. We'll sell most of the furniture with the house, Jarrett finally said. Personal items. Well, we'll store some things, and some things will have to be disposed of. Dispose of? I felt the blood drain from my face. You mean throw away? Mom, be reasonable, Laurel interjected. We all have small houses. We can't keep all this junk? I finished for her. Is that what you meant? That my life is junk? No one said that, Jarrett raised his voice. But you can't take all this into a room the size of a closet. And we can't keep it all for years. We have our own families, our own problems. I sank down onto the sofa, suddenly feeling the weight of my 68 years. They had already made up their minds. The house would be sold, my things thrown away, and I would go to live out my days in sunny Cedars so I wouldn't get in the way of their lives. All right, I said quietly. At least let me gather my documents from the basement. There are important papers, insurance policies, bank statements. I'll go myself, Jarrett offered. You don't need to go down those steep steps. What exactly do you need? There are folders with documents in the safe behind the shelf with the canned goods. I need all of them. Jarrett nodded and headed for the basement door. I got up to go with him. I was the only one who knew the code to the safe, but Laurel held me back. Let's sort through these boxes first, Mom. We need to make sure you're taking everything you need. What's the code for the safe? Jarrett called from the basement. I told him the combination, Silas's birthday. Strange, but I had a bad feeling about it. It was as if I was giving away my husband's last secrets. The next hour was spent agonizing over what to take. Laurel ruthlessly went through my boxes, emptying most of their contents. You can leave that. You won't need that. Why do you need these old letters? When she got to my collection of porcelain birds, I couldn't take it anymore. Laurel, stop. These were gifts from your father. He brought me one from every business trip he took. Mom, there won't be room for all of this. Collection in your room. Pick 2 or 3 of your favorites. 2 or 3 out of 52? How could I choose between the crimson one from Boston, which he brought back after his first meeting with the company that bought his patent, and the blue jay from Chicago, a gift for our 30th anniversary? At that moment, the sound of a car pulling up reached us from the street. A minute later, the door opened and Webb appeared on the threshold. My youngest, so much like Silas in his youth, the same dark hair, the same straight gaze. Hi, Mom. He hugged me, and for a moment I felt protected. Sorry I'm late. Madeline wouldn't let me leave the car. Of course, Madeline, always Madeline. It's okay, dear. I'm glad you're here, I said, hugging him tightly in return. Where's Jarrett? Webb looked around. In the basement gathering Mom's documents, Laurel replied, continuing to sort through my things. Help me here. We need to sort out what she's taking with her. Webb sat down next to me on the sofa. How are you, Mom? Ready to move? His voice was soft, without Jarrett's assertiveness or Laurel's irritation. But I saw the same determination in his eyes. I had to be sent to Sunny Cedars. No, Webb, I'm not ready, I replied honestly. I don't want to move. This is my home, where I've spent my whole life with your father. This is where you grew up. Mom, don't start, Laurel moaned from across the room. We've discussed this 100 times. No, Laurel, we haven't discussed anything. My voice grew stronger. You just presented me with a fait accompli. It'll be better for everyone. But no one asked what's best for me. Mom, we're worried about you. Webb took my hand. After that pneumonia. Stop using my pneumonia as an excuse. I pulled my hand away. I'm completely healthy. Dr. Phelps said I'm in great shape for my age. But you live alone, Webb persisted. What if you fall or get sick again? There'll be no one there to help you. I can install an alarm button or hire a part-time caregiver. There are plenty of solutions that will allow me to stay at home. And who's going to pay for that? Jarrett interjected, coming up from the basement with a box of documents. Your pension won't cover it. I had to fight the urge to tell them about the royalties, that I had enough money not only for a caregiver but also to help them, as I had done all these years. But something told me that now was not the time. I'll manage, I said firmly. I always have. Listen, Mom. Jarrett put the box on the table and sat down across from me. The house needs repairs. The roof, the foundation, the heating system, it all costs money. A lot of money. If we sell the house now, we can pay for you to live in a nice retirement home for many years to come. And you'll pocket the rest? I blurted out. There was silence. Even Laurel stopped sorting through her things and froze with the porcelain bird in her hands. So that's how it is, Jarrett said slowly. You think we're doing this for the money? Isn't it? I looked him straight in the eye. Your auto repair shop needs to expand. Laurel wants to start a new life after her divorce. Webb needs money for his new business. I know everything, kids. You're not as secretive as you think you are. That's not fair, Mom, Webb said quietly. We really care about you. Then why not let me stay in my house? With help if I need it, but in my house? Because it's better for everyone, Jarrett repeated for the 100th time. Including you, even if you don't understand that right now. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, it was a clear autumn day. The maple leaves in the yard were beginning to turn red. Silas always said that autumn was the best time of year in Havenport. Let me at least say goodbye to the house, I said without turning around. Alone, please. After a short silence, Laurel spoke. All right, Mom, we'll wait outside. Jarrett has already loaded your boxes into the car. Don't be too long. We still have to drive to Sunny Cedars and get you settled in. I heard them leave. Jarrett's footsteps heavy like my father's, Laurel's light steps, Webb's uncertain footsteps, as if he were wondering if he was doing the right thing. When the door closed, I slowly walked around the house. Every room held memories. The kitchen, where I cooked Sunday dinners for the whole family. The living room, where we decorated the Christmas tree every Christmas. The children's bedrooms, long since converted into guest rooms and a study. My bedroom with Silas, where I spent so many nights alone after his death, still feeling his presence. I went down to the basement. The safe was open and empty. Jarrett had taken all the documents. It was a good thing I had moved the most important patent papers to a bank safe deposit box long ago, but I still felt uneasy. The last place I went was the garage. This was where Silas spent most of his free time working on his inventions. The workbench was still against the wall, although the tools had long since been cleared away. Paint cans and some parts I no longer remembered the purpose of were gathering dust on the shelf. In the corner of the garage stood an old chest of drawers that we had planned to throw away when Silas was still alive, but never got around to it. I opened the top drawer. It was empty. Jarrett must have gone through everything already. The second drawer was also empty. In the third drawer lay a worn leather folder. I took it out, feeling my heart beat faster. It was Silas's diary, which he had kept during the last years of his life. I didn't know it was here. I thought it was among the books in the bedroom. Mom! Jarrett's voice from the street brought me back to reality. We have to go! I quickly stuffed the diary into my bag. At least I would take this with me, even if I had to leave everything else behind. As I left the house, I turned around one last time. 43 years of my life were left behind that door. Ahead of me lay Sunny Cedars in a room with only the bare necessities. I'm ready, I said, approaching Jarrett's car where Laurel and Webb were already sitting. But it was a lie. I wasn't ready. And I would never be ready to be torn from my home like an old tree from its native soil. The drive to Sunny Cedars took almost an hour. Jarrett drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel tightly, as he always did when he was tense. Laurel, sitting next to him, checked her phone periodically, probably texting her kids or her new boyfriend, whom she thought I didn't know about. Webb settled into the back seat next to me and spent most of the trip staring out the window, only occasionally glancing at me with concern. I held my purse on my lap, containing Silas's diary, the only thing I had been able to save at the last minute. Jarrett had insisted that we take only 3 boxes of belongings, assuring us that nothing else would fit in the room. Sunny Cedars, even the name sounded fake, like an advertising slogan for something unpleasant. We're almost there, Jarrett broke the silence as we turned off the highway onto a narrow road lined with tall pine trees. See, Mom? It's really beautiful here, almost like the country. I said nothing. Yes, there were pine trees, of course, but so what? I had lived in the city my whole life, a small city, but one with history and neighbors I had known for decades. There was something artificial here, like the set of a movie about happy old age. Finally, a 3-story red brick building with white columns at the entrance came into view. In front of it was a well-kept lawn with several benches where elderly people were sitting. Some were reading, others were just looking into the distance. I noticed that no one was talking to each other. We're here, Laurel said, trying to sound optimistic. Look how beautiful it is. And the people are so peaceful. Peaceful? More like lifeless. I felt like I had walked onto the set of a zombie movie. Jarrett parked at the main entrance and we got out of the car. Webb took my boxes out of the trunk and Laurel headed for the doors to take care of the formalities, as she put it. Inside, the building was bright and clean to the point of sterility. It smelled of lemon air freshener and just a little of medicine. I would have recognized that smell anywhere, having worked as a school nurse for 35 years. At the reception desk sat a young woman with a fake smile plastered on her face. Her name tag read, Cynthia Morris, Administrator. "Good afternoon! You must be Doris Neville," she exclaimed with exaggerated cheerfulness. "We are so happy to welcome you to Sunny Cedars." "Hello?" I replied dryly. I saw no point in pretending to be thrilled about what was happening. "We've already prepared all the paperwork," Cynthia said, turning to Laurel. "You just need to sign here and here as the responsible party." Laurel leaned over the papers, quickly reviewing and signing them. I noticed that no one offered the documents to me. It was as if I were no longer capable of making decisions on my own. "Where do I sign?" I asked, moving closer. Cynthia looked embarrassed. "Oh, Mrs. Neville, you don't need to sign anything. Your daughter is taking full responsibility." "But it's my life, isn't it?" I looked at Laurel, who was avoiding my gaze. "Mom, it's just a formality," Jarrett interjected. "Someone has to be listed as a contact person in case, well, you know." "In case what? In case I suddenly develop senile dementia or just die here in this sterile, lemon-scented prison?" I decided not to continue the conversation. What was the point of arguing when the decision had already been made for me? When all the papers were signed, Cynthia came out from behind the desk with a folder in her hands. "Now I'll give you a tour and tell you about our daily routine," she announced with the same plastered smile. "Follow me." We followed her down a wide corridor with pale green walls. On both sides were doors with numbers on them, obviously the residence rooms. Some of the doors were ajar, and I could catch a glimpse of elderly people sitting in armchairs or lying in beds. Almost no one was moving. "Sunny Cedars is a modern retirement home for seniors," Cynthia chirped. "We have everything you need for a comfortable and active life." Active? I hadn't seen a single active resident yet. "This is our common room." Cynthia pointed to a spacious room with sofas and a TV. In the corner stood a bookcase with worn volumes. Several elderly people sat in front of the TV, staring blankly at the screen. "Every evening we have movie nights. On Tuesdays we show classics and on Thursdays we show modern films." I noticed that Webb was writing something down on his phone, probably the schedule for these entertainments, so he could tell his friends what a wonderful life they had provided for their mother. "And this is our dining room," Cynthia continued as we walked on. "We have 3 meals a day according to a schedule. Breakfast is from 7 to 8 in the morning, lunch is from noon to 1, and dinner is from 6 to 7 in the evening. The menu is designed by a nutritionist with the needs of the elderly in mind. A strict meal schedule, like in prison or a hospital. I'm used to eating when I'm hungry, not when I'm told to." "What if someone gets hungry between meals?" I asked. Cynthia looked slightly puzzled. "We have afternoon tea at 4 o'clock, tea and biscuits. What if you want a snack at another time?" "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mrs. Neville. We have a strict diet set by the doctors. It's for your own good." Jarrett put his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, you'll get used to it. It's really good for you to eat on a schedule." I shook his hand off. I didn't need to be comforted like a child. Our tour continued. Cynthia showed us the recreation room with board games and puzzles, the medical office where the nurse was on duty, and the winter garden, a glassed-in veranda with a few scrawny potted plants. "Now I'll show you your room, Mrs. Neville," Cynthia finally announced, leading us down the second-floor hallway. "Number 214. You'll have a wonderful view of the east side. The sunrises are very beautiful in the morning." She stopped at the door marked 214 and solemnly handed me the key. "Here, this is your home now." I inserted the key into the lock and opened the door. Inside was a small room with a single bed, a bedside table, a small desk, a chair, and a narrow wardrobe against the wall. The window did indeed face east, but the view was of a parking lot, not nature as I had expected. "It's pretty cramped," Laurel remarked, looking around. "All our rooms are standard size," Cynthia smiled. "But they're very functional. The wardrobe will hold all your clothes, and there are drawers under the bed for seasonal items." Webb put my boxes on the floor by the bed. There were only 3 of them, but even they took up a significant amount of space. "We have certain rules at our boarding house," Cynthia continued, handing me a booklet. "Everything is described in detail here. Lights out at 9 in the evening, wake up at 6 in the morning. Please keep quiet after 9. TV can only be watched in the common room. Visits from relatives are allowed from 10 in the morning until 7 in the evening, no more than 3 times a week, so as not to disturb the rest of the residents. I listened and couldn't believe my ears. Lights out at 9? I'm 68, not 8. I've been a night owl all my life and loved reading until midnight. What about personal belongings? Jared asked. Mom brought some photos and books. Of course, personal belongings are allowed, Cynthia nodded. But we ask that you don't clutter up your room. You can hang 2 or 3 photos on the walls, no more. No more than 5 books at a time. The rest will be stored in our library. 2 or 3 photos? I had dozens of them, each with its own story, its own memories, and books. I had a whole room in my house filled with bookshelves. What about medical care? Laurel asked. My mom sometimes needs blood pressure medication. Oh, don't worry about that, Cynthia exclaimed. We have excellent medical staff. A doctor comes twice a week, and nurses are on duty around the clock. All medications are dispensed strictly according to schedule. All you need to do is give us the prescriptions from your doctor. Administered on a schedule. Another reminder that I no longer had control over even my own medication. I had been a school nurse for 35 years and knew exactly when to take which pills. Every resident has an emergency call button. Cynthia pointed to the red button on the wall near the bed. If you feel unwell, just press it, and the nursing staff will come to your aid immediately. I nodded, unable to find the words. It was all so humiliating. It was as if I was no longer a person, but some kind of exhibit in a museum of old age. Well, we'd better leave Mom to settle in, Jarrett said, glancing at his watch. We still need to get back to the city before dark. So soon they won't even help me unpack? Of course, Cynthia smiled. I'll walk you out, and Mrs. Neville can get acquainted with her room. Dinner will be in half an hour, and I'll send someone to show you to the dining room. The children said goodbye to me hastily and awkwardly. Laurel hugged me and whispered, We'll come visit you, Mom, I promise. Jarrett patted me on the shoulder and said he'd call tomorrow. Webb hugged me the hardest but didn't say anything. And then they were gone, and I was left alone in room 214 with 3 boxes of belongings and a booklet of rules for Sunny Cedars. I sat down on the bed, narrow and hard, nothing like my old one with the soft mattress that Silas and I had slept on. I opened one of the boxes, the one with the photographs. Laurel had allowed me to take only 10 out of several dozen. I chose the most precious ones, our wedding photo, where Silas and I were so young and happy, 3 with the children at different stages of their lives, a photo of our house taken on the day we bought it, and several pictures from family celebrations where we were all together. Where would I hang them if I was only allowed 2 or 3? And how could I choose between memories that were equally precious? I put the photos aside and opened the second box, which contained clothes. There were only a few outfits, mostly practical items that Laurel had chosen. Why do you need so many dresses, Mom? You're not going to go to balls here. My favorite blue dress, the one I danced in with Silas on our 40th anniversary, was still at home. Or rather, it was no longer at home. Where was it now? Thrown away as useless junk? The third box contained a few books, toiletries, and my medications. I took out the pill bottles and read the labels. Everything was the same as usual: blood pressure, joints, vitamins. But now I wouldn't be able to take them when I needed to. Now some nurse would do it, according to a schedule. Suddenly my phone rang, old but reliable. I took it out of my purse and saw Webb's name on the screen. Hello, I answered, wondering why he was calling since he had just left. Mom, it's me. Webb's voice sounded guilty. I'm sorry I couldn't come help you move. Madeline insisted that I take the kids to some event. I frowned. But you were here, Webb. You helped carry the boxes. There was a pause. What? No, Mom, I didn't come. I've been with the kids all day. Did Jarrett and Laurel manage on their own? I felt a chill run down my spine. Webb wasn't there, but I had just talked to him, hugged him. Was I losing my mind? Yes, I managed to say. They managed. Mom, are you okay? You sound strange. Everything's fine. I'm just tired from moving. I'll come visit you on the weekend, I promise, Webb said. Madeline wants to come too. Madeline? My sister-in-law who always found an excuse not to come to family dinners? I doubt it. I'll be happy to see you, I lied. How are you there? Is the room nice? It's small, I answered honestly, and there are too many rules here. You'll get used to it, Mom. It's for your own good. It'll be better for everyone. That phrase again, I was starting to hate it. Of course, dear, I have to go. Dinner's almost ready. Okay, Mom, call me if you need anything. I love you. I love you too. I hung up the phone and stared into space. If Webb wasn't here, then who was I talking to? Who was I hugging? Was I so upset that I was hallucinating? A knock on the door snapped me out of my trance. Mrs. Neville? A male voice asked. My name is Elliot Payne. I'm a nurse. I'm here to take you to dinner. I opened the door. Standing on the threshold was a young man in his 30s with a friendly face and a shock of reddish hair. His name tag read, Elliot Payne, nurse. Hello? He smiled, and unlike Cynthia's smile, his seemed genuine. I'll help you settle in during your first few days. It can be a little difficult getting used to a new place. Thank you. I tried to smile back, but my lips wouldn't obey. I just spoke to my son on the phone, and he said he didn't come today, although I'm sure I saw him here. I think I'm going crazy. Elliot looked at me sympathetically. You're not going crazy, Mrs. Neville. It's a normal reaction to stress and a change of environment. Many newcomers experience temporary disorientation in the first few days. It will pass, I promise. His words sounded reassuring, but I still felt uneasy inside. What if this was the onset of senile dementia? What if the children were right in sending me here? Come on, I'll show you where the dining room is. Elliot gestured for me to follow him. I'll tell you a little about our boarding house on the way, not as formally as Cynthia. We moved down the hallway. Elliot walked slowly, matching my pace, even though I could have walked faster. Cynthia is always so formal with newcomers, he said, lowering his voice. But it's not as strict as she makes it out to be. Some rules can be bent. I looked at him with interest. Like what? Well, like lights out at 9. Sure, they dim the lights in the hallways and turn off the TV in the common room. But no one checks to see if you're in your room. A lot of people read late into the night with a nightlight or listen to the radio with headphones. That sounded better. What about scheduled meals? Elliot looked around as if checking to see if anyone was listening. There's a shelf for special diets in the fridge in the kitchen. It usually has yogurt, fruit, and cookies. If you get hungry between meals, you can take something from there. Just don't tell anyone I told you. I felt my lips stretch into a smile. Thank you, Elliot. That's very kind of you. I just remember how my grandmother ended up in a similar place, he said. It was important to her to maintain at least the illusion of control over her life. We reached the dining room, a large room with several long tables covered with white tablecloths. The elderly residents were already seated in small groups, some talking, but most silent, staring at their plates. You've been assigned to the third table, Elliot said, pointing to a group of 4 women and 2 men. These are your neighbors on the floor. Feel free to introduce yourself. I nodded, although the prospect of talking to strangers seemed unpleasant at the moment. All I wanted was to be alone and make sense of what was happening. Dinner lasts an hour, Elliot continued. After that, you'll have free time until 9. You can sit in the common room or go back to your room. I'll come by before breakfast tomorrow to show you around in more detail. Thank you, Elliot. I was truly grateful to this young man for his kindness. You've been very helpful. Not at all, Mrs. Neville. He smiled. By the way, if you need any help unpacking or hanging pictures, I can stop by after my shift. It's not officially part of my job, but you're willing to help anyway, I finished for him. That's very kind of you. My grandmother always said that kindness costs nothing but means everything, Elliot said. Now go meet your neighbors. They're not as scary as they seem at first glance. He winked at me and walked away, and I headed toward the table he had indicated, feeling a strange mixture of anxiety and relief. Maybe things weren't so bad at Sunny Cedars after all. At least there was one person here who saw me as a person, and not just another old lady who needed care. I sat down at the table, and an elderly woman with neatly arranged gray hair turned to me. You must be new here, she asked. My name is Eleanor Bishop. Welcome to our little circle of outcasts. The others at the table laughed, and I felt the tension ease a little. Maybe I really could find a home here, or at least a place to live, not just exist. At least until I figured out how to get back to my real home. A week had passed since my confinement at Sunny Cedars. I call it confinement, although, of course, no one locks me in my room, and I can move around the grounds of the boarding house. But what is it if not a prison with soft walls and fake smiles from the staff? Every day is like the one before, as if someone took a single script and plays it over and over again. I get up at 6 in the morning not because I want to, but because there is movement in the corridor, the medicine carts rattle, and the nurses knock on the doors, reminding us to take our morning pills. Breakfast is from 7 to 8. Oatmeal or scrambled eggs, toast with jam, weak coffee or tea. Then there's the morning activity, reading newspapers in the common room, or, if the weather is nice, taking a walk around the grounds under the supervision of the staff, as if we were children in kindergarten. Lunch from noon to 1 p.m. Soup, salad, something stewed, compote. Afternoon rest, an unspoken rule of quiet hour, when most of the residents doze in their rooms or armchairs in the living room. Afternoon tea at 4 o'clock, tea with biscuits like in an English boarding school for young ladies. Dinner from 6 to 7, usually something light, so as not to burden the digestion before bedtime. And at 9 o'clock, lights out, when the lights in the corridors are dimmed and the TV in the common room is turned off. Over the course of the week, I got to know my table neighbors, but I can't say I made any friends. Eleanor Bishop is a former English teacher who quotes the classics all the time and corrects anyone who makes a grammatical mistake. Mortimer Grant is a retired accountant who spends his days counting the calories in every meal and complaining about the quality of the food. Ruth Sanders is a pastor's widow who constantly talks about her husband as if he were a saint. Frances Doughty is a former housewife who still tries to feed everyone, even though she is not allowed to bring food into the dining room. And then there are two men, Gordon and Alfred, both silent and lost in their own thoughts, rarely engaging in conversation. They have all accepted their fate, resigned to spending the rest of their lives within these walls. But I can't stop thinking about my home, about the things I left behind, or that have been thrown away, as Jarrett said. Every night I fall asleep thinking about how I can get back home, and I wake up with the same thought. The children hardly ever call. This week there was one call from Jarrett, dry and formal, like a report to his boss. "How are you, Mom? Is everything okay? Are they feeding you well?" "Great. I'm fine. Lots of work. Can't talk long." Laurel sent a message. She didn't even call, just wrote that she was very busy at her new job and would definitely come as soon as she had time. There was nothing from Webb. The promised visits, of course, never happened. Neither Jarrett, Laurel, Webb, nor Madeline showed up at Sunny Cedars. Not that I expected them to. I know my children well enough to understand that by sending me to this nursing home, they had, with a clear conscience, crossed me off their list of things to do. The only bright spot in this monotonous life was Elliot Payne. The young male nurse came to see me every day, helped me settle in, told me about the unspoken rules of Sunny Cedars, and even brought me fresh magazines from town. The library here consisted mainly of worn detective stories and romance novels from 50 years ago. On his day off, Elliot helped me hang up my photos. Not 2 or 3, as Cynthia allowed, but 8, arranging them in a group on the wall by my bed. "Just make sure the administrator doesn't come in to check," he winked. "And if she does, let's say I hung them up as art therapy prescribed by the doctor." Today is Wednesday, my 8th day here. The morning began as usual. Wake up, pills, breakfast. I was just returning from a walk around the grounds, alone without the company of the other residents, preferring my own thoughts to their conversations about illnesses and deceased spouses, when I saw Elliot rushing toward me with an excited expression on his face. "Mrs. Neville," he called out to me. "I'm glad I found you. I have something for you." He was holding a medium-sized cardboard box, slightly battered, as if it had been thrown or dropped. "What's that?" I asked, coming closer. Elliot looked around as if he didn't want anyone to overhear us. "I found this near the dumpsters behind the building," he said, lowering his voice. "Your name was written on it, and I thought it might be yours." My heart began to race. Things from my house? The very things Jarrett and Laurel had decided to dispose of? "Where did you find this?" I took the box from Elliot's hands. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. "There are dumpsters behind our building," Elliot explained. "I was taking out the trash after cleaning and noticed this box next to the bins. It said Doris Neville, personal on it, and I thought it didn't belong there." I looked at the box. Sure enough, Jarrett's uneven handwriting was on the side, spelling out my name and the word personal. My heart sank with grief. They hadn't even bothered to throw my things away properly. They just dumped them by the trash cans. Thank you, Elliot. I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. You have no idea how much this means to me. You're welcome, Mrs. Neville, he smiled back. Would you like me to help you carry it to your room? Yes, please. We headed back to the building. I held the box tightly as if it contained something incredibly valuable. Maybe it did. A piece of my former life, discarded as useless by those who should have cherished it. In the room, Elliot placed the box on the table. Would you like me to stay and help you sort through your things? He offered. I shook my head. Thank you, but I'll manage. It's personal. Elliot nodded understandingly. Of course. If you need anything, I'll be here until 6. When he left, I closed the door and walked over to the table. The box was sealed with tape, but not very carefully. I easily tore off the tape and opened the lid. On top were the photos, the ones that didn't fit in the 3 boxes Jarrett had set aside. Pictures of our house in different seasons, photos from trips, family portraits. Among them, I found my favorite photo, Silas in the garage working on his invention, smiling at the camera. I took that photo myself on the day he finally finished the prototype and was so proud of his achievement. Underneath the photos were letters, a whole stack tied with a faded blue ribbon. They were letters Silas had written to me when he was away on business. Despite the advancement of technology and the advent of cell phones, he always preferred to write by hand. There's soul in a handwritten letter, Doris, he used to say. When you hold paper that a loved one has touched, it's like touching them. I untied the ribbon and took out the top letter. Silas's handwriting was neat and clear, so unlike Jarrett's careless scrawl. My dear Doris, it began, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. It was a letter from Chicago, written a year before his death when he was traveling to meet with representatives of a company that was using his patent. I put the letters aside, deciding to reread them later, in peace and solitude, when I could immerse myself completely in my memories without the risk of being interrupted by a knock on the door or an announcement of another meal. Underneath the letters were books, several volumes that had not made it onto Laurel's list of essentials. My well-worn Jane Austen, a collection of Robert Frost poems with notes in the margins written by Silas, a cookbook with recipes we had collected throughout our lives. And at the very bottom of the box was a folder. A simple beige cardboard folder tied with string. I didn't recognize it at first, but when I untied it and opened it, my heart skipped a beat. They were Silas's patent documents, not the originals. Those, as I had thought, were in the safe deposit box, but copies that we had kept at home. The patent certificate with the official seal, technical drawings signed by Silas, the royalty agreement with Autotech Industries, and, most importantly, bank statements for the last 5 years showing regular income from the use of the patent. The amount was substantial, not a fortune, of course, but enough to provide a comfortable life for an elderly person, or to help expand a car repair shop, or to buy a new house after a divorce, or to start a business. I leafed through the documents and images from the past came to mind. There was Jarrett coming to me asking to borrow money for new equipment for his workshop. Just from your savings, Mom. I'll pay you back. There was Laurel, tearfully telling me about her marital problems and how she needed to get back on her feet after her divorce. There was Webb, once again fired up with a new business idea that required a small investment. And every time I helped them, giving them some of my royalty money, but never telling them where it came from. Silas asked me to keep the patent a secret, and I kept my promise. Even when the children grew up, even after his death, I continued to keep this secret. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe if they knew where the money really came from, they would have appreciated their father more. Or on the contrary, would they have considered these funds their rightful inheritance and demanded even more? I sighed and gathered the documents back into the folder. The fact remained, my children had thrown this folder away with other unnecessary things, without even bothering to open it. They had literally thrown away what had provided their financial stability all these years. It was almost noon. Soon it would be time for lunch. I hid the folder with the documents under the mattress. Not the most original place, but there weren't many options for hiding places in a small room. I decided to sort through the rest of the things from the box later. I could hang the photos on the wall. Elliot would surely help. I would reread the letters in the evening, when I was sure to have some privacy. And the books. Well, I would have to break another rule of Sunny Cedars and keep them all to myself instead of turning them into the shared library. I was distracted during lunch. Eleanor called me twice before I responded. Are you all right, Doris? She asked, adjusting her glasses. You seem distracted today. Just lost in thought, I replied. I received a message from home. Oh, how lovely, Ruth perked up. Did your children send you something? I almost laughed bitterly. If she only knew that my news from home had been found in the trash can. Yes, some personal items, I replied evasively. My children never send me anything, Mortimer grumbled, poking at his plate with his fork. They dumped me here 2 years ago and forgot I existed. Don't say that, Morty. Francis patted his hand. They're just busy with their lives. Their lives, Mortimer snorted. What about my life? They don't need me anymore, that's the truth. I listened to this conversation with a new understanding. A week ago, I might have argued, said something comforting or optimistic. Now I could see that Mortimer was right. Our children had sent us here so we wouldn't interfere with their lives. It'll be better for everyone except us. After lunch, I returned to my room and continued sorting through the contents of the box. Every photograph, every letter, every book brought back memories. Some happy, some sad, but always vivid and alive, reminding me that my life was not limited to the walls of Sunny Cedars. I took the folder with the documents from under the mattress again and carefully studied the account statements. The last deposit was 2 weeks ago, after the children had decided to send me to the boarding school, but before I actually moved. The next payment should arrive in 2 weeks. I wonder if the children will notice that the money is still coming in. And what would they think when they realized that the source of these funds was not just Mom's savings, but regular royalties from their father's invention? There was a knock at the door and I quickly hid the folder back under the mattress. Come in, I said, straightening up on the bed. The door opened and Elliot appeared in the doorway with a cup in his hand. I thought you might like some real coffee instead of that swill they serve in the cafeteria, he said, handing me the cup. I brought it from home and brewed it in a thermos. I gratefully accepted the cup. The coffee smelled delicious, strong, aromatic, nothing like the watery liquid they called coffee here. You're an angel, Elliot, I said sincerely. You have no idea how much I miss real coffee. I can imagine, he smiled. How's the box? Did you find anything valuable? I took a sip of coffee, enjoying its taste, and wondered how much I could tell Elliot. He seemed sincere and genuinely cared about my well-being. But he was still a stranger. Yes, there were things that were important to me, I finally replied. Photos, letters, books, memories of a life that my children thought they could throw away. Elliot sat down on the edge of a chair at the table. You know, I see this all the time, he said thoughtfully. Children bring their parents here, leave them with the bare minimum, and disappear from their lives. They visit once a month, if that, and consider their duty done. Why do you work here? I asked, suddenly interested. You're not like the other employees. They treat us like a burden. You treat us like people. Elliot smiled, but there was a flash of sadness in his eyes. My grandmother spent her last years in a place like this. I visited her often and saw how lonely elderly people are, how important human interaction is to them. Real interaction, not forced. After she died, I decided I wanted to work with elderly people, but in a different way. Not just handing out pills and taking blood pressure, but really helping them maintain their dignity and joy of life. I nodded, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. That was exactly what I was missing here. The feeling that I was still a person, not just an old body in need of care. Do you have any hobbies, Elliot? I asked, changing the subject. Besides saving old people from depression? He laughed. Actually, yes, I'm into photography. In my spare time, I take pictures of nature, architecture, sometimes people if they don't mind. Really? I perked up. My husband loved photography too, not professionally, just as a hobby. Most of our family photos are his work. I saw some on your wall, Elliot nodded. They're nice, especially the one with you in front of the lake. Beautiful composition. We talked for almost another hour about photography, books, life before Sunny Cedars. Elliot turned out to be not only kind, but also an interesting conversationalist. When he finally left, citing his duties, I felt a little better. Maybe life here wouldn't be so bad if I had at least one person I could talk to. In the evening, after dinner, when the hallway was quiet, I took out the folder with the documents and looked through them again. The decision came almost instantly. Tomorrow I would call the lawyer, the one who had helped Silas and me file the patent and who was still handling all the royalty matters. I would ask him to come over and amend the transfer agreement. Let my children know that they had literally thrown away the source of their prosperity. Let them understand that their father, whom they considered a simple mechanic, was a much more important person than they thought. And let them realize that their mother is not a helpless old woman who can be sent to a nursing home to live out her days, but a person who is still capable of making decisions and controlling her own life. I hid the folder back under the mattress and went to bed. It was getting dark outside, and on the wall, illuminated by the dim light of the nightlight, hung photographs, evidence of the life they had tried to take away from me. But now, thanks to this box I had found by chance, I had a chance to change everything. I woke up the next morning with a firm decision. I had hardly slept all night, going over the details and memories in my head, like pieces of a mosaic that were finally coming together to form a clear picture. The box of documents Elliot had found in the trash can had changed everything. After breakfast, I returned to my room and took the folder out from under the mattress again. Now that the initial shock had passed, I could study the financial documents more carefully. Bank statements for the last 5 years showed monthly payments from Autotech Industries, not astronomical sums, but quite significant. On average, they amounted to about $8,000 a month, enough to live comfortably and even save. I remembered how I had managed this money over the years. Some of it went toward maintaining the house, some I saved, and a significant portion I spent on the children. Jarrett regularly asked to borrow money to expand his workshop or buy new equipment. Laurel was always short of money for college and then for a down payment on a house. Webb changed jobs 3 times, and each one required startup capital. I helped them, never refused because I could afford it. But I never told them where the money really came from. Silas asked me to keep the patent a secret. "Doris, this is our safety net," he said, sitting at the kitchen table one evening after signing the contract with Autotech. "If the children find out about the steady income, they may stop trying themselves. Especially Jarrett and Webb. You know how easily they give up when things get tough." I agreed with him at the time, although deep down I thought he was being unfair to his sons. Now, looking back, I can see that Silas was right. Jarrett still hasn't been able to get the workshop up and running, even though he's been at it for 20 years. Webb jumps from one idea to another without ever finishing anything. Even Laurel, the most successful of them all, has always relied on my help in difficult times. After Silas died, I continued to keep the secret of the patent. At first, it was out of respect for his last wish, then out of habit, and then I began to notice that the children took my help for granted. They didn't appreciate the money they received from me because they considered it mom's savings or dad's inheritance, not the result of his talent and hard work. I sorted through the transfer receipts and thought back over the last few years. Here was a check for $20,000 made out to Jarrett for new diagnostic equipment. Here was a transfer to Laurel to pay her divorce lawyer. Here was the money sent to Webb for his latest failed startup. Everything fell into place. They sent me to Sunny Cedars not because they were concerned about my health after pneumonia. They wanted to sell the house and get access to my mother's savings. They thought they could inherit the money without knowing its true source. It was almost 10 in the morning. I carefully put the documents back in the folder and hid it in a pillowcase, a new hiding place I had thought of during the night. I had to act quickly before the children found out about the patent on their own. I left the room and headed for the office of the director of Sunny Cedars. Unlike the administrator, Cynthia, Mrs. Elizabeth Coleman rarely appeared in the common areas, preferring to run the boarding school from her office on the first floor. Her secretary, a young woman with chestnut hair pulled back into a tight bun, looked up at me in surprise. "How can I help you?" "I need to speak with Mrs. Coleman," I said firmly. "It's important." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm sure she can spare a minute." The secretary looked uncertain. "Mrs. Coleman is very busy. I won't take much of your time." I smiled, but added a steely note to my voice. "Tell her Mrs. Neville wants to discuss her financial affairs. It's in the best interests of Sunny Cedars." The mention of finances worked. The secretary pressed the intercom button and announced my visit. After a short wait, I was invited in. Mrs. Coleman turned out to be a tall woman in her 50s with immaculate hair and a strict suit. She pointed me to a chair across from her desk. "How can I help you, Mrs. Neville?" "I need to contact my lawyer urgently," I said without preamble. "I have important financial matters that require his attention." Mrs. Coleman raised an eyebrow. "You can use the phone in your room. My lawyer is in Portland. I need him to come here with some documents. For that, I need your permission for an after-hours visit and a confidential meeting." "I see," she said, studying me closely. "May I ask what the matter is? Perhaps our lawyer could help." "Unfortunately, no. It concerns intellectual property and patent law. Marcus Winters has been handling my affairs for many years." The name of a well-known state attorney made an impression. Mrs. Coleman straightened up slightly. "Of course, Mrs. Neville. You are welcome to bring your attorney at any time. We can provide a small conference room for a confidential discussion." "Thank you," I said, allowing myself a slight smile. "And one more thing. I would prefer that my children not know about Mr. Winter's visit. It's a family matter." Mrs. Coleman hesitated but nodded. "We respect the privacy of our guests, Mrs. Neville." Back in my room, I called Marcus Winter's office. His secretary recognized my voice. We had spoken often since Silas' death, when we needed to arrange for the royalty payments to continue. "Mrs. Neville, it's good to hear from you. How can we help you?" "I need to see Marcus urgently. It's about Silas's patent." "One moment, I'll check his schedule." After a short wait, she returned. "Mr. Winters can come see you tomorrow at 11 in the morning. Is that convenient?" "Perfect. I'm currently staying at the Sunny Cedars boarding house in Havenport. The manager has been informed and will be provided with a room for our conversation." The next day dragged on unbearably slowly. I tried to behave as usual. I had breakfast in the dining room, walked around the grounds, and even attended a needlework class, which I usually ignored. But my thoughts kept returning to the upcoming meeting. Marcus Winters arrived right on time. He was a tall man in his 60s with a neat gray beard and a penetrating gaze. We had known each other for 20 years, ever since Silas decided to patent his invention. "Doris, it's good to see you," he said, shaking my hand. Although the circumstances are obviously difficult. We settled into a small meeting room provided by Mrs. Coleman. I took out a folder of documents and briefly explained the situation. How the children had sent me to a boarding school against my will, how they had thrown out my belongings, and how, by chance, I had discovered that copies of the patent documents were among them. Marcus listened attentively, occasionally making notes in his notebook. "And what do you want to do?" he asked when I had finished. "I want to stop the royalties being paid into the bank account that my children have access to," I said firmly. "Instead, the money should go to a new account that only I control." Marcus nodded. "That's easy to arrange. I have all the necessary forms with me." "But Doris, are you sure you want to go down this path? Your children—" "My children sent me to live out my days in Sunny Cedars and threw my belongings in the trash, Marcus," I interrupted him. "They thought they were getting rid of useless junk, but in fact they threw away the documents that made them rich all these years." Marcus sighed and took a folder of documents out of his briefcase. "All right, let's fill out the forms to change the royalty recipient's details. You'll need a new bank account." "I have a personal account that my children don't know about," I said. "I opened it after Silas died, just in case." We spent almost 2 hours filling out paperwork and discussing details. Marcus explained that the changes would take effect immediately, and the next royalty payment due in 10 days would go to my personal account. "What will you do when the children notice the money is missing?" Marcus asked, gathering the signed documents into his briefcase. "I think they'll contact me very quickly," I smiled, but without cheer. "And then we'll have a serious talk." Marcus left, promising to call as soon as the changes were registered in the company's system. I returned to my room with a sense of duty fulfilled. Now all I had to do was wait. I didn't have to wait long. 4 days later in the early evening, as I was reading one of the books I had found in the box, the phone rang. Jarrett's name appeared on the screen. "Hello?" I answered, trying to sound normal. "Mom?" Jarrett's voice sounded tense. "How are you?" "I haven't called in a while, been busy at work." "Everything's fine, thanks." I smiled involuntarily. So predictable, no calls for almost 2 weeks, and now suddenly, busy at work. "Listen, Mom, there's something I need to tell you." He hesitated. Do you know what happened to your bank account? I tried to withdraw some money to repair the roof on our house, your former house, and it turns out that the last transfer didn't go through. Our house. So they hadn't sold it yet, just put it up for sale. And Jared, of course, had access to my bank account. I had added him as a trustee after Silas died in case anything happened to me. Really? I tried to sound surprised. How strange. Maybe there's been a delay at the bank? I called the bank. They said there were no deposits, but the transfer usually arrives on the 15th like clockwork. What transfer, Jarrett? I asked innocently. Pause. I could almost see him frowning, trying to come up with an explanation without revealing what he knew about the regular deposits. Well, your pension and those savings you get every month. You said you and your father had some investments. Oh, that. I pretended to remember. Yes, that's strange. I'll have to look into it. So you don't know what the problem is? His voice took on a note of irritation. No, Jarrett, I'm here at Sunny Cedars where you put me. I don't have access to a computer to check my bank transactions. Maybe you should call the bank? It's quite a large sum, Mom. We need it for repairs. We? As if the house still belonged to the whole family and wasn't up for sale without my consent. I'll call tomorrow, I promised. It's late now, the bank is closed. Okay, Jarrett was clearly dissatisfied. Call me as soon as you find out. It's really important, Mom. Of course, dear. How are Laurel and Webb? Are you going to visit me? We're very busy right now, but we'll come as soon as we can. After a few more minutes of awkward conversation, Jarrett said goodbye. I put down the phone and leaned back against the pillow, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The plan had worked. The kids had noticed the money was missing and were worried. But it was sad to realize that it was money, not my well-being, that had finally prompted my son to call. The 3 days after Jarrett's call passed in a strange state of anticipation. Laurel also called that evening, supposedly to see how I was feeling, but quickly turned the conversation to the strange situation with the bill. I repeated the same story. I didn't know anything, but I would find out. Webb didn't call at all, which didn't surprise me. He always preferred the older generation to deal with unpleasant situations. I spent those days in an unusually cheerful mood for Sunny Cedars. Even the dull oatmeal for breakfast and the endless babbling of the TV in the common room couldn't spoil my mood. Elliot noticed the change and once, bringing me another cup of real coffee, asked, "You're glowing today, Mrs. Neville. Has something good happened?" I smiled as I sipped the aromatic drink. Let's put it this way, Elliot. Sometimes life gives us unexpected gifts, even if they're found in a trash can. He nodded understandingly, not asking any further questions, for which I was grateful. Elliot knew how to respect personal boundaries, a quality my children so sorely lacked. On the 4th day, Wednesday, I was returning from my morning walk around the grounds when the administrator, Cynthia, called out to me from behind the reception desk. "Mrs. Neville, you have visitors, 3 of them." I slowed my pace, feeling my heart beat faster, so they had arrived, all 3 of them. "Thank you, Cynthia. Where are they?" "In the small living room." Cynthia smiled her professional smile. "How nice that your children are visiting you." I nodded and headed for the small living room, a small room with sofas and armchairs designed for meeting visitors. On the way, I glanced in the mirror in the hallway, fixed my hair, and straightened my back. I wanted to look composed and confident, not a helpless old woman who could be ignored. When I opened the living room door, I saw all 3 children. Jarrett was pacing around the room with his hands in his jeans pockets. Laurel was sitting on the edge of the sofa, tapping her foot on the floor, a sure sign of her nervousness. Webb was sitting in a chair by the window, looking at his phone and pretending he wasn't there. "Kids, what a nice surprise," I said as I entered the room. "It's been 2.5 weeks since I moved. I thought you forgot where I was." Jarrett turned around, and I noticed how his expression quickly softened from irritated to concerned and son-like. "Mom, how are you?" He came over and hugged me. "We were worried." "Really?" I allowed myself a touch of irony. I thought Sunny Cedars was the perfect place where everyone took such good care of me. Laurel got up from the sofa and hugged me too. "We called, Mom. We've just been very busy." "Yes, of course," I nodded. "Work, children, things to do, I understand." Webb finally tore himself away from the phone and also stood up to greet me. His hug was the most sincere of all. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner, Mom," he muttered. Madeline, don't explain, I said, patting him gently on the back. I know how Madeline feels about visits like this. We sat down, me in the chair across from the sofa where Laurel and Webb had settled, Jarrett remaining standing, towering over all of us. So, what brought you all here at the same time? I asked, even though I knew the answer. What miracle made you find time in your busy schedules? Jarrett and Laurel exchanged glances. Their trademark look they'd used since childhood when they had to decide who would bring up an unpleasant topic. Apparently, Jarrett had drawn the short straw. Mom, we were worried about your bank account, he began. You said you'd call the bank, but it's been several days and the money hasn't arrived. Oh, you mean that, I said, folding my hands calmly in my lap. Yes, I figured out what the problem was. And? Laurel asked impatiently. There have been some changes in the payment arrangements, I replied in an even voice. The money is now going to a different account. What other account? Jarrett frowned. You have another account we don't know about? Imagine that I do, I smiled. A personal account I opened after your father died. And you transferred those payments there? Webb asked cautiously. But why, Mom? The moment of truth had arrived. I looked at each of them in turn. Jarrett, tense and already angry. Laurel, worried and irritated. Webb, simply confused. Because I decided it was time to make some changes in our relationship, I said. Especially after I found out you threw my things in the trash. We didn't throw them out, Laurel began, but I raised my hand to stop her. Don't lie, Laurel. A box of my personal belongings was found near the dumpster behind Sunny Cedars. Luckily, one of the employees noticed it and brought it to me. We just couldn't keep everything, Mom, Jarrett apologized. We don't have room. We picked out the most important things. The most important things? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Among the unimportant things were your father's patent documents, the very patent that has paid for your businesses, your homes, and your education all these years. There was a moment of silence. Jarrett froze with his mouth open. Laurel sat up straight on the couch and Webb frowned, not understanding what I was talking about. What patent? Laurel finally managed to say. The patent for an improved valve for car engines, I replied. Your father patented it 7 years before he died. Autotech Industries has been paying royalties for the use of this technology ever since. Quite substantial royalties, I might add. Dad invented something for engines? Webb looked genuinely surprised. And he got a patent? Yes, Webb. Your father wasn't just a mechanic as you always thought. He was a talented inventor. He just didn't like to brag. And all that money you gave us over the years, Jarrett began. It was royalty from the patent, I finished for him. Not some mythical savings or investments you preferred not to ask about as long as the money kept coming. Laurel looked shocked. But why didn't you ever tell us? Why did you hide it? Because your father asked me to, I sighed. He was afraid that if you found out about a steady source of income, you would stop trying, especially the boys. Jarrett flushed with anger. So you mean Dad didn't trust us? He thought we'd just sit around and do nothing? Was he wrong? I asked bluntly. Jarrett, how many times in the last 10 years have you come to me for money for your workshop? First to open it, then to expand it, then for new equipment. And where is the result? You're still barely making ends meet. That's not fair, Mom! Jarrett exploded. Business is complicated. You don't understand. And you, Laurel. I turned to my daughter, ignoring Jarrett's indignation. College, wedding, house, divorce. Every time you came to me for help. And that's okay, I'm your mother. But you never asked where I got the money to help you. All you cared about was the result. Laurel lowered her eyes, unable to find the words to argue. And you, Webb. I looked at my younger son. 3 failed businesses in 8 years, and every time I gave you startup capital. I was going to pay you back, Webb muttered. I know, dear, you were all going to. But the fact remains, you've grown accustomed to relying on this money. Money whose origin you didn't even bother to inquire about. Jarrett, still red with anger, crossed his arms over his chest. And now what? You've decided to punish us by cutting off our funding? I've decided to restore justice, I replied. That money belongs to me. It was earned by your father's talent and was intended to provide for my old age. Not for me to spend my days at Sunny Cedars while you run my house and spend my money. We did it for your own good, Laurel exclaimed. After that pneumonia. Stop it, Laurel. I shook my head. We all know pneumonia was just a convenient excuse. You wanted to sell the house and get your hands on my savings. And get me out of the way so I wouldn't get in your way. That's not true. Laurel looked hurt. We were worried about you. So worried that you didn't visit once in 2.5 weeks? I raised an eyebrow. And you only came now when the money stopped coming in? There was a heavy silence. Jarrett clenched and unclenched his fists. Laurel stared at the floor, and Webb looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. What do you want, Mom? Jarrett finally asked. Why are you telling us all this now? I want us to dot the I's and cross the T's, I said calmly, and establish new rules for our relationship. What rules? Laurel asked warily. I straightened up in my chair, feeling a surge of confidence. First, I'm coming home. Not to Sunny Cedars, but to our house, the one you were so eager to put up for sale. But Mom, Jarrett began. I'm not finished, I interrupted. Second, the house is mine until the day I die. No talk of selling it. If the roof leaks and the foundation sinks, we'll repair them with the money from the royalties. Jarrett pursed his lips but said nothing. Third, I'm hiring a housekeeper who will come 3 times a week. If my health deteriorates, we can discuss a nurse. But the decision will be mine, not yours. What about the money? Jarrett asked bluntly. Will you continue to help us? Typical Jarrett. Straight to the point, no beating around the bush. I won't stop helping my children, I replied. But the help will be on my terms, not on demand. And you'll have to report back on how you're using the money. Report back? Jarrett protested. I'm 47 years old, Mom. I'm not a child. Then don't act like a child, I retorted. Grown-ups are responsible for their financial decisions. If you need money to expand your workshop, show me a business plan. Convince me that this time it will work. Jarrett looked like he was about to explode, but somehow he managed to restrain himself. And one last thing, I continued. I expect respect from you. Not condescending pats on the back and promises that it'll be better for everyone. I want real respect for my wishes, my decisions, and my life. I'm your mother, not some burden you need to get rid of. Silence reigned. The children looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Finally, Webb, my quiet Webb, broke the silence. Mom's right, he said, looking at his brother and sister. We treated her unfairly. We used her without thinking about her feelings. Laurel sighed and rubbed her temples. I didn't want you to think we were getting rid of you, Mom. It's just, life is so hectic with so many problems. We really thought you'd be better off here. Better for whom, Laurel? I asked gently. For me or for you? She didn't answer, and that spoke louder than any words. Jarrett, still tense, finally sat down on the couch next to his brother and sister. Okay, Mom, you've made your point. We get it. What now? Now we start over, I said. I'm going back home. You help me move and return the things you didn't have time to throw away. We'll arrange for the necessary help around the house, and we'll start building a new, honest relationship. What about the money? Jarrett asked again. Jarrett! Laurel scolded him. What, we're all thinking about it? I'm just asking. I smiled. At least he was honest. Payments will resume when I return home and verify that you have fulfilled your part of the agreement. However, as I mentioned, it will be under new terms. Jarrett nodded, clearly not thrilled with the conditions, but understanding that he had no choice. When do you want to go home? Laurel asked. Today, I replied without hesitation. Right now, I've been living in this place for 2.5 weeks, and every day here is torture. The children exchanged glances again. But Mom, Laurel began, we need to get the house ready. Call the real estate agent. You can call the real estate agent, I cut her off. And the house is in the same condition it was when you took me away. Unless you managed to sell all the furniture. No, the furniture's still there, Jarrett admitted, but still so sudden. There was nothing sudden about you sending me here, I reminded him. It's today or never, Jarrett. Choose. He sighed and got up from the couch. All right, Mom, today is today. I'll help you pack. I'll call the realtor and cancel the sale, Laurel said, reaching for her phone. Webb came over and took my hand. I'm sorry, Mom. I shouldn't have let this happen. I squeezed his hand in response. You've always been the most sensitive of the three of you, Webb. But sometimes you have to stand up to your brother and sister even if it's uncomfortable. He nodded, and I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Jarrett headed for the door. I'll go find out what paperwork needs to be signed to get you out of here. I'll pack your things, Webb offered. Thank you, dear, but I can manage, I replied, rising from the chair. There's not much, and I need to say goodbye to a few people. I left the small living room feeling victorious, but not gloating, just sad. I had won the battle, but at what cost? My children now knew that I hadn't trusted them enough to tell them about the patent. They felt betrayed and perhaps humiliated. Our relationship would never be the same. But maybe it's for the best. Maybe something healthier and more honest will come out of this crisis. A relationship based on respect, not financial dependence. A bond built on love, not obligations. I headed to my room to gather my few belongings and, most importantly, to find Elliot and thank him. Without that box he saved from the trash, nothing would have changed. I would have stayed at Sunny Cedars, and my children would have continued their lives, visiting me occasionally out of a sense of duty. Now everything would be different, new rules for a new life. And even though I was 68, I felt like this life was just beginning.